In terms of the environmental impacts, it's, you know, a gasification or pyrolysis system is a thermal treatment system, so therefore it does have emissions. The emissions are slightly different than what you might find in a combustion system, as Professor Themelis has mentioned. However, they are regulated. They meet the regulations that standard organizations put out, such as the US EPA, the EU BREF regulations. And so the key is that there are emissions. They are below regulated standards, and you know, that opens up a bigger discussion as to what is acceptable in terms of emissions. And you know, if we believe and you know, follow our policymakers and our decision makers and these organizations that scientifically set regulations matched with human health risks, then these systems should be acceptable, just like the emissions from a car, just like the emissions from a power plant, and so on. The social aspect is a little bit different, and that touches upon, I think, a few things. I just want to comment a little bit in the social aspect. You know, we, as you know, Demetria, we had put on a conference over at City College that looked at sustainable waste management in megacities, and it basically touched upon the waste hierarchy from reuse and reduction all the way down to landfilling. And one of the sort of themes that came out of that was twofold. One is people's behavior needs to change, and that is on two sides. One is many people think that it's possible to reuse and recycle all waste, and so therefore there's no need for any disposal options, whether that be a thermal disposal or landfilling. The other side of that sort of theme that came out in behavior of people is the focus and the care. When you ask most and take surveys of most people about their sensitivity, their feeling toward the environment, it usually comes up at a very high level. They are aware of environmental issues. They want to have the least amount of impact on the environment that they can. But when you connect it to the actual garbage that they generate, there seems to be a disconnect. And so one of the things that we found in this conference was that people in New York City are very knowledgeable about what to do with the waste. However, many of them choose not to do it. So the social aspect of this, gasification technologies and pyrolysis technologies in some respects are considered more benign than combustion, or as Themelis says, incineration systems. However, others see that as what they call disguised incineration. And the key, I think, question about the social acceptance of any of these things is how is the people's behavior that are generating this material going to change to ensure that they get put into the proper processes, whether that be reuse or recycling, or whether it be disposal in a thermal system or disposal in a modern, well-designed landfill. This is the way we will manage this waste at the scale that it's generated.
We have tackled the matter of public perception quite a lot in our research at Columbia University. Recently, we made the study was just dioxins. Dioxins always mentioned as the big problem. We found out that dioxins were a minute fraction from waste to energy plants that was something like 3 grams per year versus 3,000 from the US as a whole. We're doing a study like that for China, and we're making another study for mercury now, the same inventory. I should say that the people, when they talk about emissions, they compare with recycling, which, as Professor Castaldi mentioned, in many cases it's not possible to recycle. I mean, if it could be done, let's do it. But they have to compare it with landfill, and landfills extend over hectares of land, it's very difficult to collect the gases. Regarding where combustion with energy recovery would apply, I would say everywhere, but up to now has been out of the reach economically for countries like India and countries that have relatively low GDP. But the Chinese, in the last few years, they built something like 30 waste-to-energy plants a year, although they have a very low, relatively low GDP, and they've been able to do it by a less cost technology. So these are we think that this combustion with energy has to apply on a large scale. You have to have, let's say, over 300,000 tons of waste per year to apply it, which means cities and megacities.